Did he make them popping again? Because obviously everybody's tuning in to what LeBron James is going to do for sure. But there was no shortage of Lakers tickets being bought. I guarantee that. But the story of Nikki Barnes, it's a really, really powerful story. I don't know if you guys know about it. Do you know anything about Nikki Barnes? Are you guys familiar with him? He is a notorious Harlem gangster. Um, he is infamous for essentially creating like the black version of the mafia in a sense. He called it the council, and it consisted of 7 members. He created a rule book, a book of rules for them to follow, and they had the game on lock. They were in all 5 boroughs of New York City. They were a huge drug conglomerate, basically. And Nicky Barnes, he is one of the most famous gangsters in Harlem history. He infamously snitched on his entire team. Okay, so he started this whole thing, and it began to go not the way that he planned, and he became a turncoat. And I want to talk about this story with you guys because, like I said, it's really powerful. And when I thought about what LeBron James was doing, and then I thought of the Nikki Barnes story in that documentary. First of all, guys, if you have never seen it, Mr. Untouchable, it's an incredible documentary, really great. Lots of great throwback songs in there as well. I really enjoyed it. It's old. It's an old documentary. I think it came out somewhere around 2010 or something, maybe 2007 or something like that, actually. It was around the time that American Gangster dropped, and basically those 2 movies were being pit against each other. So American Gangster was a fictionalized version of Frank Lucas's story, and then Mr. Untouchable was the documentary film version of Leroy Nicky Barnes's book called Mr. Untouchable that he wrote. And so I want to just talk to you guys a little bit more about this story. Basically, Nicky Barnes, you know, he was the guy. He was the man in the 70s, throughout, honestly, all throughout New York City. Like I said, he had the council. Like, so many amazing things came out of the council. The council, the Apollo. Anybody here from Harlem in the audience? You know, Guy Fisher was a part of the council. He's responsible for the Apollo and getting that up and running. Very historical landmark in Harlem. Just an incredible place. Lots of legendary performances have happened there. And anyhow, um, essentially, Nicky Barnes, he was the guy in the 70s. You know, he had the council, they had their set of rules. He was married, he had kids, he, you know, he had a bevy of women at his disposal. And he was called Mr. Untouchable because he kept beating these cases. He had an incredible lawyer that, you know, he beat federal charges. They called him Mr. Untouchable. He was basically the Teflon Don before John Gotti. So when John Gotti was getting off, and he just, you know, they couldn't catch him, they couldn't convict him. The same thing was going on with Nicky Barnes prior to John Gotti and his court cases. And he kept getting away with it. He had like I said, he had a great legal team, and you know, he was he was dubbed Mr. Untouchable because they just could not nail him. And finally, one member of the council messed up, and he was being recorded. There was a rat, there was an informant, someone who was undercover, and he was recording Jazz. That was his name, Jazz. Seems to be a real nice guy. He's actually an activist now, but he was recording Jazz, and they were talking about laundering money, basically washing money, lots of bills, and that was recorded. And pretty much, Nicky Barnes was arrested from that wiretap, and essentially, excuse me, Nicky Barnes, he actually had Guys, Nikki Barnes had the very first anonymous jury. Excuse me. So Nikki Barnes had the very first anonymous jury, and it was just insane. Basically, like, in the past, and Nikki Barnes was able to do this. He was able to turn jurors. He was able to flip them and essentially, make sure that they were on his side during trial. And not this time. The president. So what happened was Nikki Barnes went on the cover. Okay, I forget what magazine he went on the cover of, but essentially he posed on the cover of, maybe it was New York Magazine or Time. Maybe it was Time Magazine he was on the cover of, and it was titled Mr. Untouchable. He had a red, white, and blue tie on as if he was Mr. America, and they're calling him Mr. Untouchable, a guy that's just, he was basically flaunting the fact that he's getting away with, these murders, getting away with being a drug kingpin, essentially. And so President, I believe it was Jimmy Carter at the time, he decided that this wasn't going to fly. And he was going to make sure that Nikki Barnes was convicted and put away. Okay. He wanted him down. He wanted him under the jail, and he was going to make sure that it happened. And he said, hey, do what you have to do to get the conviction. So they got an anonymous jury, and, the rest was history. But essentially, he went to jail. He went to jail for life without parole. And he was in jail for a couple of years before he decided to become an informant and be a turncoat and tell on all of his friends. He told on all of his friends. He told on his wife even. And the reason why he told on his wife and his friends and, basically the entire organization that he built, it was out of revenge. And I have some sound for you guys that I want to play because I want you guys to hear this story, and be along this journey with me. And it really is a good one. Nikki Barnes, he's so, like, his infamous story about being a rat, basically, it's so impactful because of the reason why he ratted. A lot of people, they rat on their friends, they become a snitch, basically. They tell stories because they want a lesser sentence. They want out of prison. They fear being down. And a lot of guys, when they get into this business, at least back then in the 60s, the 70s, there was a code of honor. In the mafia, it's like called omerta. Um, and in the Black community, it's just don't tell on your friends. You don't snitch. You don't rat. It's the bottom line. And Nikki Barnes did just that. And it started, he's in jail and some things are not going his way. And he doesn't understand why. And he's getting frustrated and he's getting frustrated. And here's the start of why Nikki Barnes ratted, basically. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to listen closely. This sound is coming from the documentary itself, and it was very difficult for me to pull it. And he speaks very low. He was an old man in witness protection. He was still alive at the time of the documentary. I think he was in his 70s. And here's what Nikki Barnes had to say about where he felt like things started, where things went wrong before he decided that he was going to become an informant.
I'm in the joint. I got life with no motherfucking parole. And I'm still doing shit for these niggas, man. And they couldn't even honor that. Why am I sending out supply after supply and they're sitting out there fucking up money, buying bad loads of shit? I think that probably the breakdown began with guys' obsession to fill my shoes. The king is dead, but long live the king, because I'm the new king. I'm in the...
So basically, someone on his team was jealous of him. Someone on his team wanted to take his spot. That's what he's saying, right? So that's where it started. And so, when you create something, sometimes you say to yourself, well, if I can't run it, I'm going to ruin it. It starts and stops with me. LeBron James calls himself the king, right? He called himself the king. But it's clear to me that LeBron James, he wants unquestionable loyalty. He wants unlimited power. He wants unquestionable loyalty from you, but he doesn't have to give that in return. Not to his teammates, not to any organizations, to no one. LeBron James has zero loyalty to anyone. Nikki Barnes, he felt like he created the council and there were rules that you needed to follow. And he created these rules so that they were all on the same page. They basically they took an oath to this rule book. And Nikki Barnes, he talks about he does a really old interview. So basically when he first became an informant, this picture of him, he's sitting down to do an interview about it. And I mean, he very transparently talks about why he became a snitch. And he starts off talking about his wife, actually. And this sound is going to come from the documentary. He's talking about his wife, how she was disloyal to him. And so I want you guys to hear this.
Thelma was disloyal to me. So I called one of my buddies, and he said, yeah, he said, Nick, he said, she was on 7th Avenue. In your Mercedes, in your white Mercedes. And he said, I didn't even see him. They called me to the car. He said, Tito called me to the car because he wanted me to see that he had your woman. Anyhow, Thelma got involved with this character, and she began to disregard what were her duties to me.
So you heard Nikki Barnes, and the
legitimate reason why I got angry was because of Shemeka, but he will never say that part. He'll never say, well, you know, when she found out about Shemeka, she got upset, and so she turned to someone else. That would be like too close to the truth.
Thelma was disloyal to me. So I called one of my buddies, and he said, yeah, he said, Nick, he said,
so he talks about how Thelma, his wife, she was disloyal to him. She had the nerve to be with one of his associates. And his associate, while he's in jail, is sitting there saying that, hey, like, come and see me. Come take a look at me. I've got Nikki Barnes' girl. I've got his wife. There's nothing he can do about it because I'm out and he's in. Right? That's a huge betrayal. Right? So he's behind bars. He's got these folks that he thinks are working for him. So he's still the king behind bars. He's still the king behind bars. And he's giving his team orders, and they're not following them. They're not following them.
Unknown caller.
My girl, and he did. And when the word got back to Nicky, that was something that alienated him about Guy.
We had bought the Apollo, and Guy was handling all of the renovation and opening of the Apollo. And I'm hearing stories about him sitting up in the balcony with my woman, kissing on my woman. Look at that guy. I'm thinking, this faggot ass motherfucker. But he got a phone with my woman. So I'm saying to myself, what does that mean, nigga, that you did it? You did that to her. Guy put himself in the position of dictating policy to me. I'm the one who dictated the policy, not he. You don't fuck with the king's woman. You can be a womanizer all you want. but you don't violate the rules. And when he violated them, he had to pay. I said to Frank, I want you to lay down Tito, and I want Guy in the ground. I want him horizontal, man. That's what I want done. And he said, well, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to get it. So anyhow, he's not doing anything. And as I'm looking at it, I know why he's not doing anything. The guys began to realize that I wasn't getting out. I'm thinking to myself, and I remember saying to myself, I can't run it. But I sure could wreck that motherfucker, man. I can't run it, but I could wreck it.
Guys, after he says that, by the way, James Brown, The Payback comes on, and it's an amazing song. So, guys, don't forget about that song. Don't forget about James Brown. Such an incredible song. But he can't, if you heard Nikki Barnes, and I know the sound is low, this documentary was a low-budget film, and it was recorded low. So there was nothing that I can do about that. But he says, if I can't run it, I'll wreck it. I can't run it, but I sure can wreck it. He saw Guy Fisher with his girlfriend at the basketball game, kissing on his woman, not his wife, his girlfriend. And these girls were off limits. There were rules. You didn't sleep with other council members' women. You didn't do that. That was against the rules, and he violated the rules. And so Nikki Barnes, he wanted them down. He wanted them in the dirt. And you heard him. He realized that they were no longer working for him. And so, guys, that brings me to LeBron James. The Lakers are not working for him anymore. He wants to ruin them. He wants to ruin the Lakers. He wants to ruin the NBA, if possible. He doesn't care about anything. LeBron James has no shame in any of the things that he's doing. Parading around with his son on the golf course while the whole team is celebrating Luka's extension. No shame. No shame at all. Nikki Barnes. And so I thought that LeBron James was just like this guy. I said to myself, you know what? He's if I can't run it, I'm going to wreck it kind of person. That's what I thought. And, Nikki Barnes, he's so, he was such an insightful kind of gangster. He was such an insightful leader, especially when he went to jail. He read all these different books. Even while he was on the streets, he loved Machiavelli and really leaned into that literature to help him sort of create the council and to lead with an iron fist. And him and Frank Lucas were very different. Both Harlem gangsters. Frank Lucas had like a smaller area to cover. And he did things differently. Nikki Barnes had partnerships with Italians, and Frank Lucas had partnerships with, he says no one, I guess, overseas and transporting through caskets and things of that nature. But it was just interesting to me that what I think really separates someone like LeBron, who has no remorse for any of the things that he does, no accountability for any of the things that he does. Nikki Barnes, he believed in the brotherhood that he created. He believed in that. He swore into it. He was ready to die for it. LeBron James, the fraternity of the NBA, that brotherhood, he doesn't believe in that. He never has. He's only disrespected the previous generations of the game. He disrespects his teammates. Everybody is basically a target. When LeBron James is near you, good luck, right? But Nikki Barnes, he couldn't just snitch on his friends. It was hard for him. It was very hard for him to snitch on his friends.
I was overwhelmed by guilt. I was overwhelmed by guilt. I had every reason to testify against them and no reason at all to feel guilty. But it's that street corner indoctrination, that criminal ethic, that street corner value system. It's overpowering. And I started crying on the stand.
From guilt.
Yeah.
And emotion.
And emotion. I couldn't talk. I was overwhelmed by guilt. I was overwhelmed by guilt.
He couldn't talk. He was snitching on his friends, the guys that he built this organization with, multi-million-dollar. I believe it was $1 billion organization. Like I said, they were throughout the entire, I believe they might have, it was either all of New York or the tri-state area. But Nikki Barnes, he was the biggest drug lord coming out of Harlem at that time. Okay. And he really, when he is in the Mr. Untouchable documentary, you hear him sound totally different from what I just played for you. So back then, when he first became a turncoat, he talked about, just how horribly he felt in the moment snitching. He didn't ultimately feel bad at all. He really believed that they deserved it. He'd rather, be in the position that he was in at that time than being in jail with them, being friends with them. So I get that, he went on to say this.
In other words, it's saying that, hey, Nick, you broke the golden rule. And I'm saying, what good is a rule if the rule ain't a jewel that's fit for the crown of the king? If you're going to take the rule and just use it to make bling, and you're going to say, fuck the king, then the king going to sing.
I mean, you heard it, guys. He calls himself a king. LeBron calls himself a king, right? So that's why I was comparing those two. And if he can't run the NBA, if he can't dominate in the NBA, if he can't force us to say that he's the GOAT, then what is he going to do? He's going to wreck the league. If he can't take over the league and business and own an expansion team and slowly just, take over the league, he's going to wreck it. That's where he's at. He's going to wreck it. But guys, I spoke briefly about Frank Lucas and Nikki Barnes. They actually had a bitter rivalry back then in the 70s. They show it in the American Gangster movie slightly. Basically, Frank Lucas makes Nikki Barnes out to be like a flashy drug dealer that he didn't like. Nikki Barnes sort of asserts the same thing about him. In fact, says that he couldn't dress in the documentary, that, they were not on, he says that like Frank Lucas was nowhere near his level. And Frank Lucas, he talked a lot. He ran his mouth a lot. So Frank Lucas is another famous rat. And the misconception is that he only ratted on the police. He did snitch on his family and friends as well. Don't be fooled by that story. American Gangster is not true. It's an inauthentic story. And he actually, during that time, so at the time of the movie release and Mr. Untouchable, they were releasing similar times, Frank Lucas and Nikki Barnes actually get on the phone and talk together. So Nikki Barnes was in witness protection program at this point. Okay. And so just to give you guys a quick synopsis, he ratted on his friends. I believe he spent about 8 years in jail. He ratted on the council, the rest of the council members, and he had like, I guess, 80 some odd convictions or so. And I mean, it was pretty bad. And, I think he even had like a wing. I think he even had like a whole wing for, just for that it was called the Nikki Barnes wing or something like that. And, really funny, but pretty much, Nikki Barnes gets together with Frank Lucas. They meet for like this weird interview. So he's on the phone in witness protection, and Frank Lucas is just out and about in a wheelchair, stopping by to have this interview. And they're talking. And I mean, Frank Lucas was always like a loud, big mouth, always. And so he's kind of showing that he hasn't changed much. And they're talking during this interview. And again, it was always like a battle between these two. Nikki Barnes never really felt that he was on his level. Frank Lucas had a couple of street corners. So he had Harlem on lock, I believe, from like, 116th to whatever street. And then Nikki Barnes had all 5 boroughs. So for Nikki Barnes, it wasn't even close. And so he had heard things like, oh, Frank Lucas had a contract out on him, which he found to be laughable, all these things. And, he actually, he talks to Frank Lucas, and they're asked a question. They're asked about the independent Black man movement. And this is where I learned that LeBron James is actually more like Frank Lucas. Okay. So that's what I believe. Here is just like a picture of Frank Lucas from that day, that interview, very old. He's passed away now, but here is the sound.
Well, you guys don't have any jealousy between the two of you or anything like that?
I don't have no jealousy. I love the son of a bitch.
No.
I have one last question. Just,
This is Mark.
This is Mark, Nick. I haven't seen American Gangster, but part of what's on the web and everybody's talking about, besides the snitch thing, is who was the first Black man to declare his independence from the mafia.
That is
from
true.
The white bosses. And, some people are saying Frank was, and they've seen the trailer, and they've seen his movie, and others have read your book and have seen our movie and said, Nick, you were. I'm wondering how both of you feel in that era about the Black man standing up, even though it was illegitimate and illegal, and declaring independence. How do you see that?
I had a degree of independence, but I was kind of inextricably interwoven with Italian organized crime figures. So I couldn't say that I had complete independence from them. Frank's independence was more than mine. But because I was linked to Madonna. When I first came home, I got my first silencer and automatic weapon from Matty Madonna's older brother. I got my first package on consignment. I got my first piece of money. I got my first phony driver's license from Frank Madonna. So I had a degree. I had a degree of respect from them that a lot of blacks didn't have, because I no longer allowed them to come into Harlem and Shanghai do the pistol whip guys and take money out because guys owed them money. If they came in, they had to come through me.
And Frank, how did you feel about your relationship with the Italians and the independents? How did you feel?
Well, I did business with Italians for a few years, 3 or 4 or 5 years. But then I told my boss, Bumpy, that I want to go overseas and get some of that good dope where the soldiers were getting off of. And that's how I declared my independence. I did it. I went all the way from there. What's the matter, Nick?
No, go ahead.
I went all the way from the rice paddies of the Mekong Delta to the jungle of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, all around Malaysia, Hong Kong. I went all over there to do what I had to do. I had 3,000 keys back into the state of back into America, And you can buy 3,000, bring 3,000 keys because you bring 10.
How did you bring them in, Frank? Because there have been all those rumors about the coffins.
Coffins true in one respect and not true in another. I never put them in the coffin. We had a false bottom caskets. False bottom casket we put it in. That's when it went. And all that went hand in hand. I never in my life looked down on them for nothing. I did my own. You know what I mean?
You didn't look down on the Italians?
I didn't look down on nobody. I did my own thing.
Why do you think there's such fascination amongst today's younger generation with your era? Nikki, Frank, you guys, it's like people look back at Al Capone and Lucky Luciano and Meyer.
Well, now you're talking about the real gangsters. Yeah, you're talking about the real gangsters.
And what were you guys?
I guess you could call me that in a way, but I was not there trying to prove no point by killing people. I was there trying to make money.
Nick, why do you think there's such a fascination now with this era and you guys?
I think probably because the whole landscape has changed and there's some kind of nostalgia about what was once there. Because the way Harlem was when Frank and I were getting paid, it's not like that anymore, from what I hear. I don't know because I haven't been it. I haven't seen it.
Nick, I can tell you a fact they ain't like that no more.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, you know that, and Mark was there and witnessed it. Mary Jane and I have been attacked, and I don't know if Ridley Scott will be attacked, but for giving you screen time and not forcing you to look at the consequences of what it meant that junkies used dope. It destroyed their lives, that Harlem was destroyed, that many neighborhoods were destroyed, that the Black Power movement was destroyed. So I guess this is my opportunity. I know we've talked about this, but both of you guys, how do you feel about that? And what happened to the Black community because of heroin?
I think heroin wreaked a lot of havoc and a lot of pain in the Black community. But I mean, I'm not going to be the person who takes the sole responsibility. The sole responsibility for something like that. Yeah, I shouldn't have done it, but it's not as though I was aware. Well, maybe I was aware too, but I just didn't give a fuck. I wanted to make money, and that's what I did. That's what I did to make money. Looking back now, if I had the same perspective now, that if I had that at the time, I wouldn't have made those decisions. But now it's a hell of a lot different, and it's a lot easy to kind of sanitize yourself after the fact. But before the fact, I guess I'm just the same guy.
What do you think about that, Frank?
I agree with Nick wholeheartedly. I agree with Nick. Just every word he said, I agree with it. But I can tell you this. When we was up there getting money in the Black neighborhood, the white neighborhood, the neighborhood you want to go in, you respect is fine. And you don't get paid by respect. You get paid with fear. When the fear factor kicks in, that's when you get paid. Do you agree, Nick?
Yeah.
That's when you get paid. Hey. So you got to be a motherfucker to a certain extent to get paid.
But if you go online, you're going to see a lot of discussion. Mr. Untouchable versus American Gangster, the Hollywood version.
Well, Nick, they still try to stir shit up, but it ain't happening.
They stir shit up,
Nick, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. They still try to stir shit up. Tell me it ain't going to happen, man.
Yeah. Hey, they're making it a Crips in the blood thing, huh?
Crips in the blood.
That's what they're trying to do, but it ain't going to happen, Nick. You know that. You know that. You know that ain't going to happen.
Yeah, you guys know that an interview a couple of weeks ago with Kevin Durant, LeBron James on Mind the Game, that's what that interview reminded me of. So actually, LeBron James is Frank Lucas. He's the big mouth. He was trying to stop Kevin Durant from saying certain things, interrupting him, cutting him off so that he couldn't, make these probably really embarrassing, damaging points. Like when Kevin Durant started cooking him about taking the final shot and how it needs to be the superstar on the team. LeBron James quickly changed the subject, talked over him, was like, yeah. That's a person that they're lying about something. They need to perpetuate. They need to grandstand. They need to make sure everybody knows that they have the power in the room. LeBron James is Frank Lucas, not Nikki Barnes. If you notice during that conversation, Frank Lucas, he starts saying that his boss was Bumpy Johnson. That's a lie. He was like Bumpy Johnson's driver. He wasn't working for Bumpy Johnson in the drug game. He was driving him around. And he said to Nikki Barnes, he said to these guys that did Nikki Barnes's documentary, and Nikki's on the phone. Okay. And he's like, I went to my boss Bumpy to ask if I can go and get that good stuff overseas. And Nikki Barnes, he doesn't even address it. He laughs. He starts chuckling on the phone. because Frank Lucas is still the same after all these years, still trying to prove something, still trying to prove that, you know, he sits in the same room with Nikki Barnes. And honestly, he doesn't, not just because of, it's just for a variety of reasons. So Nikki Barnes is from New York. Frank Lucas is from the South. They were called the Country Boys. So they already don't sit in the same room because of that. Nikki Barnes makes fun of him because apparently they dress to the left. Anyhow, like I said, LeBron James is for sure Frank Lucas, not Nikki Barnes. I do want to leave you guys with one last soundbite from Nikki Barnes in the documentary. It was really good. I think you guys should all go and watch it if you like crime stories at all. Here's what he said to sort of close out the documentary and really just like a final touche to his enemies.
In the course of my reading, I read something else. I read Moby Dick. Ahab, in his relentless pursuit of the white whale, in my mind, was synonymous with the pursuit of the green dollar. And he was willing to accept all of the consequences that went along with that.
Captain Ahab was just dynamically involved in his own destruction.
Ahab said at one point, my greatest torment has become my greatest joy. But it's that obsession that drove him. And it's that same type of obsession, I think, that not only I felt, that all of us felt when it came to pursuing the dollar and then even sacrificing whatever had to be sacrificed to get it done. When I came into the program, I left Nikki Barnes behind. And I emerged from that a different person with a different set of values, a set of values that they don't even understand. And they could call me a snitch. I'd rather be here and be considered a betrayer of them than to be in there and to be considered a stand-up guy while they could be out here violating the rules. I'm out there in. Guy, life without parole. That means he's going to die in prison. That means Frank's going to die in prison. It's not as though I hear their names and I say, oh, I forgive them, for they know not what they did. No, that ain't happening, you know. I'm saying, yeah, forgive them, but they now know who they fucketh with, and it shouldn't have been me.
Oh, forgive them, for they now know who they fucketh with. I just wonder how this story ends for LeBron. So we know how Nikki Barnes and Frank Lucas's stories end, right? They were turncoats. Frank Lucas like snitched on everybody and gets out of jail, goes back to jail, he gets busted again. Nikki Barnes winds up doing 21 years. So he snitched on his friends after 8 years, did 21 years, and then the feds released him. They said that he was not going to get any relief. They were not planning to release him. They told him, hey, like if you snitch now after the fact, like we don't care. We're still not going to release you. That's how bad he wanted the revenge. So how bad does LeBron want his own team? How bad does he want Bryce in the league? How bad does he want his own league? If Bryce doesn't get drafted, is he for sure going to start his own league and take Bronny and Bryce James with him? Can create a team called the Brondashians. I like that name. But anyway, I like, what do you guys think? Is LeBron pulling a Nikki Barnes? Is he Mr. Untouchable? Is he going to get away with everything for the rest of his career? Is it finally going to catch up to him at some point? You know, is he planning on wrecking the league because he can't run it? Because we're not going to call him the GOAT, because nobody in the league views him as the GOAT. Nobody wants to be like him. Nobody wants to play like him. And the general public, we're not going to call him the GOAT. So does he have some sort of evil, diabolical plan to take over the NBA and change basketball for the worse? Curious to hear from you guys and know what you think about that. I think that LeBron James is Frank Lucas, a big mouth, somebody that he doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. Liar. I think LeBron James is a pathological liar. So was Frank Lucas. Frank Lucas was known for being a pathological liar. Bumpy Johnson's wife actually wrote a book discrediting him, saying how much of a liar he was and how much of a nobody he was to Bumpy Johnson. So anyhow, guys, I think that all of that, like LeBron James talk, it was really tiring. We do have 2 more topics left.